Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the BRoto Heatwave. 32 teams in 32 days, and we are breaking down every single fantasy-relevant player for each team for the upcoming season. Today, we're focusing on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm your host, Tim Petrop, the Fantasy Plug, editor-in-chief of BrotoFantasy.com and the Fantasy Football by Broto app, and I am joined today. We're running a two-man weave. Today's a special one by the Dynasty Don, the Fantasy Encyclopedia, the Maple Mamba, every single one that we got, and the lead writer at Broto, Mr. Matt Ward at Psych Ward on Twitter, if you didn't already know. He is basically there he is. Look at that guy. Matt is bringing you so much content through Broto, and the way that you can receive that content is through the absolutely 100% free, no doubt about it, for free Fantasy Football by Broto app. You can get it right now. It is the only tool you need to become your own expert and dominate in fantasy football. The stats you hear today, the stats you hear us use, are going to be exclusively found on the app. Well, not all of them exclusively, but some of them exclusively. Let's go over what we're talking about. On the app, you get fantasy player cards, fantasy player grades, usage stats, a start-sit tool, a who-to-draft tool, player comps, consistency charts, game logs, coaching tendencies, articles, rankings, podcasts, waivers, and what I was talking about, every single advanced statistic that you could find everywhere else, but you can get it all in one app. No one else does that, by the way. And boom, we got exclusive stats that no one else has. True throw value, true target value, true performance value, adjusted air yards, and true matchup rankings. These are exclusive stats that you cannot find anywhere else, and that literally give us the edge every single year. And the reason why this app can come to you and I can be looking at a background like this at the same time is because of the people at patreon.com. They are the people that keep this running, not me and Matt. They are the machine behind this. Big thank you over to the people at Patreon. Like literally, like even though we're the faces and the people bringing the content, we couldn't do it without you. And we appreciate you so much that we want to give you extras. And when you join Patreon, you can get, for as little as $3 a month, extra waiver wire show, access to BRoto Leagues, proven DFS cash game optimizers by it with a Casa rhythm. I'm going to TM that, trademark that. Ooh. Casa rhythm, algorithm by Cass, private team consultations, cheat sheets, the Unlimited League that opened today.
I'm so excited.
All flex leagues, and the way that you can play with prizes, by the way, on you join the Patreon. That's how you do it. And also the best part, access to the greatest community in the world on Discord, the Broto Discord, the greatest people of all time. Yeah, I've been talking for a long time. That was a little bit off topic intro. If you're watching, by the way, YouTube.com/Broto Fantasy before we get anywhere. And the reason I listen, this is my 6th different location. All right. Like I'm a nomad recording these. Just so everyone knows. And this one in particular, Jason is away on vacation, hard-earned vacation, very well earned. And I snuck into his apartment without him knowing. He has no idea I'm here. So that's what we're on. But Matt always got the hypnotic, beautiful background. Look at that thing. I just get lost in it, Matt.
Oh no.
Wait, Matt is lost in the background right now as well.
There we go. I'm back.
There he is. All right. Matt literally got lost in his own trance right now. Anyway, with that being said, let's get into the offensive outlooks for these Buccaneers. How do you say that? Oh, let's get it. Oh, we got the different transitions. New head coach is Todd Bowles. Okay. Bruce Arians moves to the front office, not gone. This is because of his rumored tension with Brady. And no one seemed to really talk about it because Deshaun Watson took the headlines. But, Brian Flores' lawsuit led to the Miami Dolphins losing 2 draft picks, a first-round draft pick. And on top of that, they uncovered that Tom Brady and Sean Payton had a plan to buy part of the Dolphins and go and play, and it was like a whole thing, and there was collusion, and they got fined like crazy, and no one's talking about it. I wonder if that had something to do with the Bruce Arians beef, probably. But anyway, it's Todd Bowles who takes over. Yeah, it's Todd Bowles who takes over. He was the defensive coordinator since 2019 after a 4-year stint with the Jets. Same offensive coordinator, though, Byron Leftwich, who has been learning under Arians for many, many years. First, he was a QB in Pittsburgh when Arians was the OC. Then he was an intern in Arizona, then the quarterbacks coach in Arizona, and now the OC with the Buccaneers. So this guy has been learning under the tutelage of risk it, no biscuit himself, Mr. Bruce Arians.
I didn't know that about their like tenure together. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, they're tethered at the waist, these guys.
That's
So
wild.
he's obviously very big on Byron Leftwich, and probably because he can lead an offense that was second in points per game, while passing the most in the league. 65.5% of plays they passed. Going into the season, their PFF ranks their O-line 4th. They made some additions as well. The big one that everyone's talking about, the recent one, wide receiver Julio Jones, which I'm very, very curious to hear Matt's thoughts on. Tight end Kyle Rudolph and guard Shaq Mason. They also drafted rookies Rashad White, a running back, and tight end Cade Otton. Matt's ready to talk about him as well. And their subtractions, of course, for now at least, tight end Rob Gronkowski, who, I think it's either the worst kept secret that he's coming back or the best kept secret, because everyone thinks he's coming back. And if he's not coming back, it's the best kept secret of all time. So you could probably, we'll talk about him later. Guard Ali Marpet and running back Ronald Jones. Goodbye. See you later. That is over. That experiment, Rojo. So let's get into this quarterback, bro. Tom Brady. I mean, the question is what the question always is. Is Father Time finally going to catch up to him?
I don't think so. I think people are quietly, like, you already prefaced it, like the second in scoring, and he led the league in passing touchdowns and passing yards. And I think people are quietly ignoring the fact that he didn't just lead the league in passing yards. That was his career high in passing yards in 21 years, the most yards he's ever passed for.
To be honest, I didn't even know that until you just said it.
That's what I mean. And yes, I get it. Like, there's an extra game, but it was also like on the highest amount of deep ball attempts and leading the league in air yards. Like, after the Patriots had kind of stopped letting him throw deep and really be a true pocket passing quarterback. And then he just goes to the Bucs and, has been lighting it up. So, like, I think when Father Time catches up to Brady, he's going to know before anybody else, and he's not going to play another snap.
So does the fact that he retired this offseason worry you in any way to maybe he's sensing that?
Yes and no, because of the the lawsuits and the fines that the Dolphins just got hit with. We know he was retiring so that he could go play for Miami.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I don't know why more people, like more players at least, don't negotiate ownership of the team in their contracts, particularly like a LeBron James. Like, he should be part owner of the Lakers 1,000%, or at least like part owner of the Cavs. 100%. Like, there's no reason why he shouldn't.
Randomly, like, Conor McGregor was like the first guy to ever figure that out, and he told the UFC, like, every time I fight, I want shares of the company.
That's well, he made a good decision.
Yeah,
that Conor. But yeah, I mean, this also isn't the most, I guess it's scientific. It's not the most scientific, but the Tom Brady diet is sort of like a paleo diet. It's like that's kind of like what it is. There's no processed food. I've done it. I've dropped weight and I've felt good, and I feel better, and I feel spry, and I feel better than I did when I was 24. So if he's doing this professionally and taking care of himself, like, why not? Like, the dude's half robot budget anyway. Yeah. Right. And he's got all these. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, like, I mean, especially at cost, he's going off the board at 81st overall at QB9, like in that range of, Aaron Rodgers, upside plays like Trey Lance, Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, like right around in that range and in those rounds. So it's like, you've already, like, Tom Brady is that classic, you go late round QB, but you get a late round QB that has QB3 upside.
Yeah. I mean, there's really draft Tom Brady. Don't be scared.
Yeah, like,
I wouldn't be scared. It's foolish now. For the last 10 years, he's been falling. It's foolish at this point, especially because of his weapons. So let's get into these wide receivers. I got to be honest. Mike Evans is someone that in the beginning of the offseason, like when I was drafting in the Scott Fish Bowl, which if you don't know what the Scott Fish Bowl is, it's a big fantasy tournament for experts and fans. And it's like, I think it's the biggest one in fantasy.
Oh yeah.
And you have to, you draft very early, like in July. I call it the unofficial start of the fantasy season. Back then, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin was going to miss 6 weeks, and there was no Julio Jones, and it looked like no Gronkowski in the end zone, and it looked like it was going to be the Mike Evans show, and he was connected to Tom Brady, and he's connected to this Buccaneers offense. I wanted every single part of that. I've slowed my roll on Mike Evans a little bit now as the news has come back that Chris Godwin is looking as if he might be able to play week 1. Also, Julio Jones. Look, we'll talk about Julio. I'm not sold that Julio is going to be a thing, but he's there, right? So
Yeah.
how is your feeling on Mike Evans? I didn't drop him too much. He's like wide receiver 7 or 8 in my rankings right now.
I like that.
Yeah. So how you feeling about that?
I think you kind of nailed it a couple weeks ago or even last month, so to speak. If you were doing those earlier drafts or even in your underdog best ball drafts when the puppy dropped, I felt like he was amazing value. You were getting him in the 4th round, and you know, again, it was you were getting him in the 4th round with all of that news. His ADP hasn't moved at all, but all of those other options have moved up. So that's where I get a little bit concerned, right? Because that ADP was with the idea, that 4th round ADP of wide receiver 12 was with that idea that Godwin was going to miss 6 weeks. His target share was going to regress back to a career norm because he only had an 18% target share last season, which was like 58th in the league. And obviously he had that red zone touchdown upside that he had even with Gronk on the field. Now, sans Gronk, 14 touchdowns isn't even out of the question, where it seemed like a massive, almost outlier of scoring production from Mike Evans last season with all of the other options. So I felt really, really good about him. I still do. And I still think Godwin's going to need some time to get back to speed. I think Gronk being gone increases that touchdown floor again. So I think double-digit touchdowns shouldn't even, concern. That's kind of his floor, I think, on that offense.
I agree. You could assume it almost.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, again, his cost is palpable enough. You're going to get him in the 4th round or early 3rd, at a top 12 wide receiver is what you're paying for him. But like Mike Evans has never had a season below wide receiver 24 in points per game. He's the first wide receiver in NFL history to have 8 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons in their first 8 years. He's finished with like 2 top 10, 2 top 5, and a top 3 finish in point per game in his career. Like Mike Evans, even with a lower target share, is just consistent. You're going to get 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns. And I don't know, there's a few options in that range that I do like, but I don't know if I like them more than Mike Evans.
Yeah, I agree. I think Mike Evans right now is a safe pick at where he's going at ADP. I think if you're in a situation where it's like, all right, I don't really believe in any of these guys. I don't think any of them are going to explode. I'm going to go Mike Evans because I know that, hey, Mike Evans might not blow the doors off PPR. He might not catch 100 balls, but he's going to come down with the ones in the end zone, the ones that are important, and he's going to be consistently involved in the offense. He's never going to really give you a dud game. So I think that's my projection for Mike Evans this year. Let's go to the other side because now you got Julio Jones on the other side, which, look, man, to be honest, I'm done playing the game of Julio Jones. But it's hard to say that because when you look at his BRoto player grades, it's literally A+, A+, until you get to the injury where it falls off a cliff to the point where he didn't even qualify last year. Right. And when that happens to a guy his age and to a guy with his injury history, it's very concerning. I don't think there's any chance Julio Jones plays 17 games this year. I don't think the chance of that is 0%. So I think what you're banking on is he at least plays most of his games. So Matt, do you think I'm on? And what do you think he could do when he plays? Like, what do you think I'm on target, or do you think what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I don't like to predict for injuries, but yeah, I think that's probably like a safe bet. If you were really going to place the under on 17 games, you take the under on Julio Jones. But I think what you're really looking for and what you want at his cost is simply what Antonio Brown did last season, where no, he didn't play every game, but he was a massive, massive advantage for his cost with the points per game that he did put up. And Yeah, like you can't even really look at Julio's season last year and use efficiency because he barely had any opportunities in the 10 games that he played, and his true target value took a gigantic dip because Tannehill's true throw value took a gigantic dip from the top 5 to 29th overall. But there's something really, really interesting that I found on Twitter today, and I feel like it's super pertinent to what's going on.
Okay.
There's only like 14 receivers ahead of Julio Jones in total yards in the NFL. In their age 33 season, these are where they finished. Jerry Rice had 24.8 points per game. Oof. Larry Fitzgerald had 15.3. Mm-hmm. Terrell Owens had 17.6. Moss had a big drop off with 6.1. Tim Brown, 16.3. Steve Smith, 13.4. Marvin Harrison, 17.9. And the list goes on with just a bunch of guys above 13 points per game at age 33. And the correlation is that all of those dudes are the only people in NFL history with more yards than Julio. So I do think that you can see gigantic production on a week-to-week basis, but you're not drafting him in expectancy that he's going to be on your championship lineup, if that makes sense.
Matt, that was a mind blower. I'm not gonna lie, it made me a little warmer on Julio Jones because before this I was out on him, and I feel like the fever pitch hasn't reached that insane level yet where you have to pay an exorbitant amount for Julio Jones. Like you don't have to pay up for wide receiver 3 Julio Jones.
Yes, because he was essentially retired. Yeah, he did jump 100 spots in ADP, but right now it's wide receiver 61, 167th overall. Like that's not like who else are you going to get in that range that has an Antonio Brown of 2021 upside?
Yeah, I mean, that you're making me warm on Julio. Don't do this to me. I took Julio last year in the Scott Fishbowl and it killed me, bro. My team was so good and it was a wasted pick and it came back to bite.
It's really just, and like, man, again, we're going to talk about the next guy, and the next guy is like, I really think you can just feel pretty comfortable drafting Buccaneers players at their cost.
Because they got the GOAT, Tom Brady. One guy who is ahead of schedule, Chris Godwin. This guy is look, everything about Chris Godwin I love. He's always a great fantasy player, but he has injury history. Also, he's been the guy he's been the Chris Bosh of this Miami Heat experiment. He's kind of put his own stats down. Like his own stats have gone down, even though he still plays that crucial role to his team. And that's not good for fantasy. It's good for the Bucs. It kind of facilitates other guys. But Chris Godwin has still been a solid player. With that being said, how are you feeling about Chris Godwin's ability to like sustain success in your lineup? Because lately it's been very bleh.
I agree to disagree. Like it's not been
of late.
Yeah, well, so yes, 2 seasons ago, he was wide receiver 2 in points per game, and
that's the Chris Godwin I miss.
And as a dynasty guy, you were seeing him, in the top 10 wide receivers, and then he fell back down to wide receiver 24 in points per game, and then last year was wide receiver 7 in points per game, matching his true target value as wide receiver 7. But a big part of that was obviously a massive, not target share, but target load, so to speak. Like he had a very high target rate. Everybody on the Bucs had a pretty low target share when you're looking like across the board or across the league. Brady really spread the ball out. And I mean, when you're that good at football, it's not hard to do. Like you can make everybody good. You really can. So I feel good about Chris Godwin. I feel good about his injury discount being baked into his ADP.
Yeah,
even
I love
though
that.
He's on pace for week 1. Right now going as the 61st overall wide receiver 24 off the board. That was his lowest points per game finish in the last 4 seasons, was wide receiver 24. My biggest concern is obviously the injury. Even if he does make it back for week 1, we saw Dalvin Cook come back a year to the date of his ACL tear, or I mean earlier than that, but like a season to the date of his ACL tear, and he struggled that whole season. And then the next year was the Dalvin Cook that we remembered because his knee was really fully healthy.
Right.
And yeah, ACLs are certainly not as significant as they once were, but I don't think that he's going to be mid-season Chris Godwin until mid-season. And that could definitely hurt your lineups a little bit. But again, like a wide receiver 24 for a guy that has a legitimate top 10 point per game ceiling, like I still like that in the 6th round. I like Chris Godwin this year.
I'll tell you what, I remember, it's hard to place because he doesn't have the blow up games he used to have when he was wide receiver 2. So you remember that Chris Godwin, but the consistency that you're getting out of him, I feel like it's what you said. It's because Tom Brady's the quarterback. Mike Evans, consistent. Chris Godwin, consistent. Chris Godwin, 4 wide receiver 1 finishes last year, 4 wide receiver 2 finishes last year, 3 wide receiver 3 finishes, and then 3 outside of that. Now that sounds like a very consistent wide receiver, but someone who doesn't hit home runs. But then look at the biggest home run threat of all, Jamar Chase, only had 4 wide receiver runs, so that would match Godwin. Less wide receiver 2 appearances than Godwin. So Godwin matched him in wide receiver 1 and was more consistent. So you can get a guy like that late because of the injury discount, but you got to be patient. But I feel like the injury discount is baked in there for the patients.
There's a good reason too. Like he was 3rd in yards after the catch, and coming off an ACL tear, you would just immediately assume for those open field numbers to regress a little bit while he gets back up to game speed. So yeah, like a big, over 55% of his yards on the season were after the reception. And if that regresses, yeah, you're going to have a bit of a lower ceiling with Godwin. But again, another thing, like only 5 touchdowns. So you can also assume positive scoring regression for him.
For sure. Let's get into these running backs. Fat boy himself, Leonard Fournette, who showed everyone that they were being stupid, and they don't understand. Like, these guys have an off season, man. Like, let them live, and then they come back to training camp and they get in shape. That's what they do. You can drop 15 pounds in training camp. It's okay. Anyway, Leonard Fournette, he was an absolute monster last year when he was on the field. His season was derailed because of an injury. Rashad White, I know, is someone you love in Dynasty. So, I mean, with that equation, I'm going to say I'm not scared to draft Fournette. He's still on a high-powered offense. But if I'm looking to handcuff him, Rashad White is an option, and Rashad White got that pass catching prowess. So let's talk about these running backs, because Matt has been itching to talk about Rashad White this for 22 minutes and 17 seconds.
Well, I mean, I'll get the big boy out of the way first. Fournette finished as the RB3 in points per game with 18.3 at a true player grade of A. His current ADP is RB14, but that's 25th overall, so he's still like a late 2nd round pick essentially. He only had 180 rushing attempts, which is way down from what the workload he used to have in Jacksonville, and 819 rushing yards, which was 19th in the league. But he made up for that with just a ridiculous target total. 84 targets, 69 receptions, which was also 3rd, a 14% target share. But like he was just very average. He was 18th in rushing yards over expected, and 18th in yards per touch, 18th in yards per route run, and 24th in yards per reception. Like he was kind of just a product of Mike Evans got hurt for a little bit. Chris Godwin was out halfway through the season after the Saints game. Antonio Brown retired midway after playing the Jets. So like Fournette was essentially their wide receiver 2, and at sometimes their wide receiver 1. I don't think that's going to continue this season.
No,
I genuinely don't. Like, not with all of the options if they're healthy. I mean, a guy that we forgot to talk about, but I can get it out of the way really quickly, is like Russell Gage has a higher target share and target rate than everybody on the roster. Higher than Mike Evans, higher than Chris Godwin. So like if that guy's supposed to be a number 3, they're taking a lot of what Lenny's ceiling was in 2021 away from him, which is the pass catching. I do still think that he can return RB1 value, and you're not drafting him as RB14, right? Like, so that's still pretty decent value. But in that 2nd round range, like when you're talking about guys like Alvin Kamara being there and Saquon Barkley being there, like
not to mention the wide receivers.
Absolutely. And I mean, the tight ends, Mark Andrews is going, 210. So when you have all of those players in that range where their target ceiling is locked and loaded, whereas Lenny's was very much a product of a offense was built a certain way, and then 4 of those 5 pieces were missing. Right. So like, I like Lenny, and I do think he has a top 12 floor or ceiling rather, but I think it's 12. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think his very ceiling is a low end RB1 this season. And that pass catching work, if it's going to the backfield, I think there's a legitimate opportunity that more than half of it goes to Rashad White.
And if you look at this Buccaneers backfield, they've had a plethora of. They've been trying to get a good receiving back in that backfield for a while. They tried it with Giovanni Bernard. They tried it with Abogawale. They tried it with a bunch of guys, and they haven't found the guy yet. And then they started feeding Leonard Fournette. I think, like Matt said, Leonard Fournette is not a pass catching back. He just was getting passes. So tell us about Rashad White, because he could be someone who has a little PPR potential.
I mean, I think he's got the world of potential. I legitimately think he's got the highest potential out of any running back in his class, like other than Breece Hall.
I was about to shut this whole thing down right now.
Other than Breece, like genuinely, like I like him more than Walker. I like him more than Cook, and yes, that's cost considering, but I do. He was the first running back in Arizona State history that led the team in rushing and receiving, and yes, that was in a shortened like COVID season, but in that season he also led the Pac-12 in yards per reception and yards per carry. So it was efficiently. Like, it wasn't just a volume. He was efficiently the best player in the Pac-12 in the shortened season. And then in just 11 games, over 1,000 yards on just 182 carries, 15 total touchdowns, 43 receptions, 456 yards. Like, this guy is a supercharged James White. He is a supercharged James White with better athleticism and similar size to, okay, like Lenny's got 20 pounds on him, but they're both 6 foot and like 220. You know, Lenny's just 240 and off-season Lenny's 265. But like, man, Rashad White is the real deal. And I think I was comfortable with his draft profile and his prospect profile, knowing the insane like analytic receiving profile that he was coming in with him going in like the 4th or 5th round. And the Bucs drafted him in the 3rd. Like, the Bucs looked at that kid like that's a starting running back.
I mean, Leonard Fournette also, you know, with the injury history, all of a sudden Rashad White, it turns into he's a guy to put on the end of your bench. I'm a big fan, a giant fan of handcuff early. And I know that is completely left of what the industry tells you to do. Completely. But when you have no bye weeks, and I don't think there's a bye week till week 4 this year. When you have no bye weeks, your bench should be filled with 2 things: potential and just in case situations. Because if you're the Christian McCaffrey manager and he goes down in week 2, you're really happy you have Chuba Hubbard. No, you know, not that happy. But 2 years ago, you're really happy you had Mike Davis. You know what I mean? Like,
well, yeah. I mean,
you know, it's just an important thing. Last year I had Zeke. I handcuffed him with Pollard. Ended up both of those guys were good for me. Let's get to these tight ends. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just think that is legitimately the perfect example, because Tony Pollard has weekly flex upside and is also arguably the most important handcuff in fantasy because of the pass catching. And like, Rashad White's going as the RB 54, 166 overall, behind Mark Ingram, JD McKissick, Jamal Williams, freaking Evan McPherson, a kicker, and Tyler Algier. Like, I just get out of here with that, man. Rashad White's going to have weekly playability and will be a guaranteed like RB1 if Fournette gets hurt.
That's what you get at BRoto, people. We ain't afraid. We ain't afraid to tell you how it is. Speaking of which, what over under week 10 on Rob Gronkowski coming back?
Week 1, I don't know, man. Right now it's Kyle Rudolph, Cade Otton, and Cameron Brate. I like Cade as a dynasty stash. We wrote about him well before the Gronk announcement because of the possibility of it in general.
I actually picked him up because I edited that article. It was insider trading. I edited that article before it went out. And so before I even put it out, I was like, all right, I'm going to check if Cade Otton is on my dynasty rosters. And I picked him up in a couple of leagues. Anyway, with that being said, continue. It's just funny. These 3 guys, just a bunch of tall, burly white dudes. Like, they're all just trying to be Rob Gronkowski, but really aren't.
And none of them are.
Yeah.
Right. And we saw Gronk had this incredible target ceiling or points per game ceiling and target ceiling. Hell, he was earning some really valuable looks out there. And he's Brady's guy. Like, he's the best man at the wedding. You know what I mean? So none of those guys are that. None of those guys are that level of talent. And the addition of Russell Gage, Julio Jones, healthy Chris Godwin, a Rashad White in the backfield to take short yardage touches or short yardage receptions away from that tight end. Like, I just don't think you're going to have much upside of the tight end position in Tampa Bay at all. It's probably the only position on the offense that I'm not looking at literally everyone on the depth chart.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be those guys are going to be weekly streams where if they catch a touchdown, you're thrilled. If they don't, then you're probably out of luck.
Going to get a reception in 8 yards.
Let's get to our bold prediction. My bold prediction is that Rob Gronkowski returns to action in week 10.
Damn it. I was going to say week. I was going to.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say Rashad White.
Well, there was supposed to be a 2-parter because I do think that Gronk isn't done, and it really does seem like he is, but we've been down this road.
Yeah,
he's really been retired before, in worse health, right? So yeah, I mean, my bold prediction's pretty obvious, man. Rashad White's more point per game than Leonard Fournette.
Whoa, okay. Remember, these bold predictions don't hold us to them. Don't hold us to them. They're just like they're let's get it. Hold on, I gotta hit this one. A spicy. It's lit. Bars. I forgot all these things. I forgot all of them today. Don't worry. Next time I got you guys. We're gonna hit the Falcons next for our last duo run. Matt and myself. Hold on, I'm messing up this right there. I see. I just want people to get lost in that Matt in that background. And then Matt's got the baby blues too. They just pop with that background. Look at those. Look at the baby blues. With that being said, Matt, where can they find those baby blues?
You can find them at PsychWardFF on all social media.
You can find me at BrotoFF Tim. You can find the team at BrotoFF Mike, at BrotoFF Cass, at BrotoFF Jason, and then you can BrotoFantasy.com, Fantasy Football by Broto app, and at Broto Fantasy, and at FF by Broto. We have so many
army, bro.
An army. Yeah. Join the army. We'll see you next time. Hut.
Peace.
Little did you know this was all just army propaganda the whole time. Like, so just